Welcome to the Senior Scene of Oceanside. We've got a very special guest today in the person of Miss Lucy Chavez, former council member here in Oceanside. Lucy, it's a pleasure to have you with us on the Senior Scene of Oceanside, and thank you for coming.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
We're going to start talking about your family. I was amazed when we visited the other day that your family had a history as long as it has here in Oceanside. And I think you told me that your father first came here in 1895. If my arithmetic is correct, that's almost 100 years ago. How did that come about?
Well, my father was raised as an orphan in Zacatecas, Mexico, which is probably the geographical center of Mexico. The college there is called College of the Guadalupe. And they train Franciscan seminarians. When they had the revolutionary period in Mexico, a lot of the young men were wanting to go out of the country. And at that proper time, they were starting the restoration of San Luis Rey Mission. The missions had been given back to the church. In fact, Abraham Lincoln signed the proclamation just a few weeks before his assassination. And the mission had fallen in such disrepair that it had to be restored. There was a father named O'Keefe who was in charge of the restoration, and he sent mostly for seminarians from Zacatecas to help in the restoration. And that's how my father happened to arrive at San Luis Rey Mission on May 17th, 1905.
It's a long time ago.
Yeah.
And I know we're a little bit ahead of ourselves here, but I know that you are working on finishing up a book.
Yes.
That you hope to have published by next year, somewhere close to that date of the 100th anniversary. Right. And I'm sure everybody in Oceanside is looking forward to seeing a copy of that when it gets published and available.
Actually, it's my sister Marie's book, and she started it with Their Life in San Luis Rey, and I'm adding the introduction, taking it back to when my father really started it, and then I'll give it an ending, and it'll be my footnotes, but her story.
Should be interesting. We're looking forward to it. Well, along with the family, then, your father did leave and go back to Mexico to get back to his childhood sweetheart, and who later became your mother. Right. And I believe you told me they came back here in 1908.
Right.
And what was he doing then?
Well, he had learned a lot of different trades, and he was majorly a baker. They taught them trades while they were in the seminary. So he had achieved the trade of a baker. So when he came to Oceanside, he continued to work as a lay laborer on the restoration of the mission. They allowed the family to live right on the mission grounds. And he also helped in the bakery, and he did odd jobs down in the little village, because there was a San Luis Rey village. And he raised the first of his 4 children in the valley, and the rest of us were raised in Oceanside after the 1916 flood.
It's interesting, today we think of the mission as being just another part of Oceanside. Back 100 years ago, the distance between perhaps the village of Oceanside and the village of San Luis Rey was quite a distance, simply because it was not that easy to travel back and forth.
No, it wasn't. In fact, I'm sure that when my dad arrived, he arrived with one other student, and I try to visualize how he got there. He had to probably get to Oceanside by train, and then either walk or ride horseback to the mission, because they didn't really have a whole lot.
A 5-minute drive today, perhaps a half a day's trip back in those days. Quite a bit difference. Well, your family ultimately had 9 children.
He had
all went to school here, either in San Luis Rey or in Oceanside. Tell us a little bit about some of the early days in school.
Well, of course, the first 4 went to school right there at the mission grounds. And one of the school buildings, of course, is gone a long time ago. And the Sisters of the Precious Blood, who were where the parish is now, they had the Little Sisters School. And all 4 of the first 4 children went to school there. And so in 1916, then when they moved to Oceanside, they joined the Oceanside schools. But my sister Marie went to the Little Red Libby School. She went to all 3 of them. The Sisters School, the mission school, and Little Libby's Red. So she made her way through all of the schools in San Luis Rey.
Very interesting. Now that little Libby school is still on the site out there.
It's on Heritage Park. Yeah.
Yes, right.
No, that's not the original site. They moved it. But,
I see.
It was over near Douglas, over across the bridge. But that is the original Little Libby schoolhouse.
Okay, now you had quite a career as a businesswoman in the town of Oceanside too. Tell us a little bit about the grocery store and how things came about. How did you get into that, as a matter of fact?
Well, so happened that my father, just prior to the Great Depression, had
the big one.
had purchased corner lots on the corner of San Diego and Bush Street, and he moved a little building there and intended to open a little grocery store and a Mexican bakery to serve the little Mexican village. And he's the one that created the business district, which exists today only from Mission Avenue to San Diego and Bush. He struggled there during the Depression, and of course the business didn't survive the Depression. And the building and the business zoning stayed there until after World War II. So after World War II, I had experience in grocery stores, small independent grocery stores. And my sister Marie said, well, there's an empty building, go out and see what you can do with it. So I went out, and within 3 weeks, I had it open and ready to go with a partner. Opened up on April 19th, 1947, ran it until probably summer of 1964. During that time, I intended only to run a business. And it was fairly successful, but most of my time, and I didn't know when I opened the store, was spent in helping bring about all of the improvements that exist in East Oceanside today, except the big recreation building that was built by HUD money. Every improvement in that neighborhood was instigated and paid for by the people who owned the property. All the improvements from, in fact, when I went there, all they had was city water. No lights, no gas, no streets, nothing.
No curbs, no sidewalks.
No curbs, no sidewalks, no schools, no telephones. I'm sorry, telephones, yes. Telephones and water.
All right.
But the pride of that community is that those people did it on their own. Every improvement was paid for by 1911 improvement tax, which they paid in their property taxes. So they can well be proud as a neighborhood.
And that was the East Oceanside Improvement Association. That eventually became the East Oceanside Improvement Association.
Well, they organized to get sewers, and they stayed organized until they got all of the improvements. And in fact, they're still in business today. They're carrying
that association still goes today. What are their current activities?
Well, this is a younger generation that is trying to keep up what was done well, and they see to it that the park is kept up, that overall the improvements that need to be either added or kept up are in the forefront. They keep in touch with City Council. They know how to work within the system now. There's younger leadership, and it's passing the torch to another generation.
Very good. So there is some definite involvement in civic activities there, which is really good. Oceanside was a pretty small village back in those days. This was prior to World War II in that area?
Well, the little Mexican village was sitting out there practically isolated by itself. It was on the fringe, you might say, of the eastern fringe of Oceanside. There were a few pioneer families that had lived there for years, and most of them were poor, except that they had 4 or 5 lots, and maybe they had 4 or 5 sons. In time, each one of them, became property owners and citizens, and some of them are still there today. They're still there today. But they had a little tiny business, 2 grocery stores, I think, and a service station to serve the little village. Probably had, I would say maybe 20 to 30 homes in what they call the barrio now. Used to call it the Pozole and a few other names. Well, that was there then, and it's still there.
Very interesting. It's and the mission's still there, and of course is one of our big attractions today from a tourist standpoint, and a very busy-going operation out there with all kinds of people attending Mass and other things going on there, which is really something. Just about the time I believe that World War II started, Camp Pendleton came into being here in the area as a military base, and I'm sure that had some impact. Do you recall some of those days?
Oh yeah. You see, we were only a few blocks from what they called Sterling Housing, which was a Navy housing.
Yes.
And
no longer there now.
No longer there.
All been removed.
All been removed. But that was a very vital part of the city then, and it was struggle time, and everybody was just sort of pulled together. We didn't really have the problems then that they do now, even, you know, with less that we had to do with. We were more of an integrated neighborhood. And in those days, the neighborhood, the parents, and the organization seemed to have a goal, and so they worked together for the goal. It worked very nicely.
Was there a crime problem like we have today?
No. In Los Angeles, they were having what they call the Pachuco gangs. But we didn't have a gang problem in East Oceanside because my brother Joe, early on, was dedicated to working with youth. He worked with recreation. My sister Marie worked with schools and Girl Scouts. I worked primarily with the citizens and registration and voting. So working together and forming new leadership amongst the people, teaching them how to work within the system, they came up very well.
That's interesting because I know Pendleton had quite an impact on the growth of Oceanside and still is, as a matter of fact, today. We've got a lot of military people here, both current military and retired, adding to our citizens here. And then, of course, highways came into being, I think, along about that time or somewhere in there. Interstate 5 was extended. It no longer was Pacific Coast Highway. It became Interstate 5. Now, at least in Oceanside, it's going to become a Pacific Coast Highway down through town again. We're reinventing the wheel, but I'm not so sure that's all bad.
No. Well, no, you're right. Oceanside was sitting here for many years. It's sort of just an isolated little seaside town, as many others up the coast. But when the war happened, it expanded it because people saw it for the first time, and they came back after the war. And then, of course, like you say, the freeway opened up a lot.
Yeah, certainly have done that. Well, you've had a busy career beyond that now, not only your role as a civic leader and being in the business of groceries, which kept you busy, I'm sure. I think you said 17 and a half years. That's a long time to work in a grocery store.
No vacation.
No vacations during that time. No union during those times
and
anyway.
Sometimes no wages. If the money's there and you need a pair of shoes, go buy a pair of shoes.
Well, that's great. Well, when we come back here in a little bit, we want to talk about your years in the City Council and some of your recollections there, and then on to what you might be doing now and what you see in the future. But right now, I think we'd like to stop for just a moment and see some public service announcements. So stay with us, and we'll be right back with the Senior Scene of Oceanside.
Oh! Hey, what's going on? Shh, Smokey's coming.
What are you guys up to?
Be careful with matches and campfires. Remember, only you can prevent forest fires.
Sorry, force of habit.
Bummer.
My friends, depend on me, Smokey B, to voice a plea. Respect the forest, protect our trees. Oh, what I do.
Smoke, baby, what's the trouble?
Round, this isn't me.
Smoke, you're 50. We agreed you'd talk to kids in their language.
I know, but I'll just give it to them straight. Kids, only you can prevent forest fires.
Smokey, Smoke!
I gotta get back to the forest.
Welcome back to the Senior Scene of Oceanside. Our guest today is Miss Lucy Chavez, former City Council person for Oceanside. And Lucy, we're having a good visit here. I wanted to go back a little bit to the East Oceanside Improvement Association and talk about some of the many things that they brought into being. I know you made the point that this was done without any burden on the taxpayers as such, but what were some of the many things that they accomplished at that time?
Well, the first and most crucial one was obtaining the sewer system, because there was sanitation problems, and that was a very essential thing. Probably their biggest fight of all was getting the sewers. And then after that, it was the street lights and the curbs and the gutters, even the alleys, which took place over a period of 17 years. But every time there was an improvement needed, we needed to form a district, and that district was formed, like I say, by 1911 Improvement Acts. They also volunteered for recreation building, helped build that, and And all of this sort of went on within the perimeters of East Oceanside, which started at Mission and went north and then the top of the hill. The other improvements that would help not only East Oceanside, but other parts of the city was this intersection that we worked with, mostly my sister Marie. There used to be Brook Street, which had an intersection that you had to jog into Mission Avenue and then to get to San Diego. There were a lot of accidents and some fatalities here. So my sister saw the advantage of making this curve, and that's why this exists today, which created a little pocket park here that few people know is even there. Has been dedicated to the women of Oceanside. It's a women's park.
I think that's very interesting because a lot of people go up and down Mission
don't even know it's
Avenue
there
today and are hardly aware of the fact that the park is there. It is, though, and an important point that you made is it is dedicated to the women of Oceanside and the Oceanside Women's Club.
I believe the Women's Club, but I'm not real sure. I am sure that it's dedicated to the women.
To women. All right, ladies, we have a park in town just for you, and I bet you didn't even know about it, so that's important. What got you into the city council?
Well, for years I was always interested in what was going on in the city. I suppose my first foray into politics was a pure bond issue back in '46, but I didn't come back into the scene until I started to try to help the people in the Mexican barrio obtain the improvements, and that put me in City Hall a lot. There were times during about 6 years that I was the only citizen in the audience, and I just became acquainted with the issues and became concerned, but I really didn't want to get involved in politics. I just wanted to be effective on the outside. But in '76, things were at a point where I figured, it's time for me to do a little bit more. So I whether I got brave or foolish, I'll never know, but I ran for city council and coincidentally made it. I think I surprised myself as well as a lot of other people. But
you actually served not only one term, but you came back and served a second one, for which the city of Oceanside and a lot of us who live here are most grateful. 76 to 1980, and again at 86 to 90. And what are some of your recollections during that time? Who are some of the people you worked with?
Well, the first term, our mayor was Mayor Graham. We had some problems, but we sort of stabilized the ship of state, and Doug Davis was what's on there, and Mr. Carl Pruitt. They change every 2 years to some extent. And there was progress made, but I think my second term from 86 to 90, I was more familiar with what I wanted to do, and I think we had a better team working, and we accomplished a lot more in my second term than I did my first term.
And all during this time, you're watching the city of Oceanside grow by leaps and bounds.
Oh, yes.
Lots of different populations, lots of growth, lots of building, some attempts to slow down that building. Some of them successful, some of them not too successful, and I guess some will have to be determined even in the future as to how successful they were. But from the time you first went on the council to now, this community has grown into one of the major cities in the county of San Diego, and we're on the map now for sure. I know that you were, during that time, were active in a lot of things, or even ahead of that time. One of the things that you mentioned to me was that you helped reinvigorate, I guess might be the word, the North County Humane Society. Tell us a little bit about your work in that.
Well, 1937 was originally chartered by a group of people that were concerned about animals, and they functioned for a while. When World War II came along, most everything stopped for the war cause, and they were inactive until 1957. And what we did was reorganized it and worked towards the shelter for 7 years. And since then, they've progressively worked until they are where they are now. So actually, I was instrumental in the reorganization and the establishment of the animal shelter.
And I think you serve on the board now.
I serve on the board.
All right, don't be modest and tell us what you're doing, because that's wonderful. One of the other things, early on, I'm sure there was need for medical care in Oceanside as it grew, and what was here ahead of the Tri-City Hospital District, and how did you help in forming that?
Well, way back, of course, we only had one little hospital, and it was mostly was a lying-in hospital, and then we had an emergency hospital, and it was down where the Bank of America is in downtown Oceanside. But then we had a little community hospital that eventually became Tri-City West, that's on Horn Street. And that's all we had during the war and during the time that we were exploding in population. So we know we needed a bigger hospital, and we had to get together and work with Vista and Carlsbad to establish what eventually became Tri-City Hospital. And there were a lot of campaigns and a lot of work to do. And I was involved in whatever I could do to bring that about.
Well, it certainly is a very major part of the community now, and a very necessary part, and one that all the citizens can thank you for your part in seeing that it got there and got put in place, because it is one of the finer medical situations.
Well, I was just one of the original supporters, knowing how badly it was not only needed then, but how badly it was going to be needed.
Early on, I know you mentioned that you were one of the few people who would go down and sit in city council, and even today we don't have that many people that are there all the time. Sometimes we have some groups there, but a lot of times it's almost an empty chamber other than the council themselves. But there was another medium coming on the scene then, and I think early on you recognized that, and that was the potential of television and what it could do. Tell us a little bit about how that came.
Well, as I sat there were so many issues that came up that were so important to the city, and a lot of people did not know about it. And I thought it would be very, very important if the newspaper or someone would publish at least the agendas so people would know what was on. But the newspaper, of course, didn't have the space. And so I believe it was the turn that I suggested, well, why couldn't we have television? They would open up a lot of accesses and a lot of information to the public. And they said, well, one day. And then Bob Bowditch came to town, I guess, and opened up views and avenues, and I'm glad he did, because I think that KOCT serves a very distinctive service, expanded to citizens to participate in their community. And that has an importance, because if you know what's going on and you get involved, you can make changes.
That's right, and that's very important, even more important today than it has been in the past, because some of our changes are pretty complex today and need some understanding. And of course today, or this week, I guess, we're having a celebration at KOCT's 10th anniversary. So you've had a very interesting part in that, along with Bob and Ida Bowditch, and we thank all of you for that. And for all of our viewers at home who are able to stay at home and still see what's happening in their city government, it's really important. And I think beyond that, KOCT Channel 17 is pretty much delivering to the citizens of Oceanside a cross-section of what's happening ethnically and socially and economically right across the board. So it really has had its impact on the city.
I believe it has.
You also were active in working on restoration of the pier. Now, this isn't the original pier in Oceanside. What's the history on that? I'm sure you've seen it come and go.
Well, I haven't seen all of them, but as I recollect, this is our 7th pier. The first one started at the foot of Wisconsin Strand. And then through the years, of course, the focal point was where the pier is today. A series of different types of pier, mostly wooden piers. But this is the first pier that, and the others had a lifespan of maybe 20 years. This is the first pier that is really engineered to oceanography, because it meets the tide and everything else. It is geared to last 50 years. It's a well-built pier. And we had to struggle for it. We had to get about 5 different sources of funding in order to be able to build it. So it's a pier that we're not only proud of, but we feel we put enough thought into it that it will be with us for more than 25 years.
It's a real asset to Oceanside.
I think
you can go out there any day in the week and see our citizens enjoying any number of recreational activities. Fishing, of course, is available there year-round, and all the people who do their walking out there. If you're so inclined, there's a restaurant on the end of it that you can enjoy the view, and it's just a wonderful place to go visit.
Oceanside has never been without a pier. It's to be known as the pride of the Pacific Coast, with the widest beach on the coast, but we always had a pier. And to me, it's a pleasure to go out there and watch at least 3 generations enjoying that pier, just like you said, doing a variety of things.
I know I enjoy it all the time. There's been a number of other things that you were active in that I've forgotten. What are some of the other things that you were busy doing as a councilwoman?
Well, generally they were cultural events, you know, Cinco de Mayo and just any social events that would bring the people together to begin to learn their own customs and integrate together and have a good time. But mostly that's been about it.
We're facing some interesting times, and not to get into politics, but we are going to be facing an election very soon here, and I'm sure you'll be watching it as all of us and participating. What do you foresee a little bit might be the future for the city of Oceanside?
Well, I always believe, and I've expressed it many times, that I think Oceanside is the last of the best of all of the cities in Southern California. I think that it has a potential beyond many, but I don't think we've reached the point where the community and leadership sit down and look at our potential, set the goals, and work together as a team to get there. I think it will happen. I think despite, I don't think it can fail because it's there. And it'll come together one of these days. The thing that I think that we need is to actually analyze our potential, formulate a plan, and set the goals, and see if we can meet those goals at certain intervals. There are other cities that have succeeded in much the same way. So you might say it's just a question of getting Oceanside's act together, and it will succeed.
There was an interesting article in the press within the last week or so. Of course, there's been a study that pretty much said, at least in the opinion of that study, Oceanside was probably not available as a major retail center. We have those around us in the surrounding communities, so that our role perhaps was to provide some special things for people as a destination point for such things as concerts or that kind of thing, and there's lots of opportunity for that. The other point it made, and I think perhaps it's what you were saying, was that before there's going to be any great investment in the city of Oceanside, the investors wanted a stabilized government that they could count on and know was going to be there and headed in the right direction. I think that's kind of what you were saying.
What I seem to sense is there's a lot of fracturing as far as the political structure of Oceanside. And in a sense, maybe it is a process of a city growing from a small city to a larger city. But I think the forces at work will bring about great change.
That's a wonderful place to live.
Can't beat it.
All of us who are here enjoy it, and enjoy people who come and enjoy it with us as visitors. We need to offer some opportunities for them. Lucy, it's been just a wonderful opportunity for us to sit and have an opportunity to visit with you, and for our viewers to get a chance to sit in on this. We thank you again for being with us. It's been a pleasure, and we'll see you again on the Senior Scene of Oceanside.